this is going to be the most lit, most fun Truth Wanted show I've ever done. But one reason, Emma, I wanted you here is because we don't run around in the same circles, even though we have some, I guess we'll call them common opposition. But your community and my community, the circles don't have a lot of overlap. So tell us a little bit about yourself for our audience.
Sure. Well, I'm Emma, and I have a commentary channel. That's my main sort of space where I have my my gang, and we talk about some atheist stuff. We talk about pastors. I kind of have a bit of a thing for sort of consumer protection, so a lot of my stuff kind of stems from there. Anything scammy or that I feel is hurting people, I kind of will call out on my my channel. So we do a lot of anti-MLM stuff as well, and then talking about pastors and things. And then I have my little side gang of dedicated friends who join me for gaming stuff as well. And yeah, those if you see any ducks in the chat tonight, those are my people.
Oh, you know what? I gotta say this because when I was on with Apologia Plug, I was wearing the hockey shirt for his home team from where he used to live, and that was kind of my thing. Like I had an ordered Anaheim Ducks shirt that I was going to wear just for you tonight, just because of your Twitter name or your Twitch name and the graphic. But you know, there's a good time to bring this up because a lot of us content creators that the audience has, you know, grown to love, like, you know, you see me on here, you see you on your channel talking about what you do. We have a lot of things that we do publicly on the side that honestly we just do for fun, right?
Yeah, sure.
And how great is it when someone from that outside community comes into our gaming channels or just our personal discords just to hang out, just to talk, and just to get to know more about us than what you see, you know, on the atheist side. What's your experiences with that?
Oh, I love that. I like if somebody comes into my gaming streams and they're like, I don't really know how Twitch works. I just wanted to say hi and see what's going. I was like, oh yes, okay. Well, currently I'm failing at things and being an idiot and being really annoying. So that's what we do here. But it's just, yeah, it's nice to have that more casual kind of back and forth. And because tends to be like a smaller crowd as well, you get to do like, you get to really like actually chat to people, usually about total nonsense, but it's like a more nice kind of personal thing.
No, and it's such a different energy, isn't it? Because you do mostly pre-recorded content, and
Yeah,
you know you get to fix pacing issues or script issues. You can re-record as many times as you need to get it right. But there's such a different energy about doing it live. Now I'm on the opposite side, right? Almost all of my content is live. I don't have that experience of writing out a script for an hour-long video, which you've done, and I have to imagine that. We see 1 hour, what you've put into it is probably like 20, right? From writing to editing to finding all the right clips. So
I mean, it tends, sorry, it tends to be for me like the long form stuff. I don't overly script because otherwise it is a bit hard it can be a bit, you know, a bit too scripted for, especially if it's like super long. Right. If I'm like reacting to video content, I tend not to, I just go off the cuff of what I'm reacting to, just because otherwise, so there's bits of my stuff that looks more like the streaming stuff, but there's nothing like the live experience. Like, you don't get this, for example. I wouldn't be going in a pre-recorded video, but you get that fun live, and who doesn't want to see that?
I'm just apologizing to all the viewers and listeners right now who did not tune in expecting a giggle fest, but this is going to be like I'm just having all sorts of fun on this one. Anyway, let's talk about that pre-recorded content you did.
Sure.
So your channel really started to pick up when you started to pick on MLMs. So what got you started in that? What got you really interested in that topic? And then what made you decide to make a video about it?
Well, it was really a personal investment to start with because I wasn't super aware of multi-level marketing. I didn't know that much about it. And then I had like a friend of a friend. It was like a friend of a friend's sister or somebody, connected with me on Facebook or something like that, and was like, "Hey, I've started this new business." She was like a hairdresser and a makeup artist, and some of my friends were friends with her, and I was like, "Great." And to cut the longest story short, I felt like I was building a friendship and a bond with somebody. It was turned out very much to be that kind of fake positivity, reaching out, making as many connections as possible just to sell products and recruit people. And that it's not like it was a close friend, but it's kind of upsetting when that happens and you're not expecting it. So I just started looking like, what is this stuff? And finding that there are millions of similar stories. And at the time I had my YouTube channel, and I, like I said, always had a bit of a consumer protection thing. I don't know why, I just am fascinated by it. And I was making videos on I was doing mostly like vlogs. And so just talking about whatever was coming up. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll talk about this. And I just I can get a little fixated on topics, and I just got really into it, and started connecting with other people who do it. And it just, became a thing.
And that's like the first big spike in your content. And then the next one was when you were talking about Paul and Morgan. That was another interesting one. So what's the interest for you in that kind of content, which for those who don't know, they kind of specialize in relationships. So how did you get interested in their stuff?
So I think somebody might have recommended this first video that I looked at of theirs to me, or recommended their channel, and I flicked through and I saw that like a silly thing, or it seemed to me like a slightly silly thing, where it's they'd stopped watching Scarlet Witch because of witchcraft, inviting witchcraft into the home. And I thought, that's quite funny. I'll look into that. And also I love movies, and I think the Marvel TV shows were really, really good. And I was like jazzed about that. So I was like, okay, this could combine a couple of interests. And it was just way more popular than I expected it to be. I don't know if I just didn't realize how popular Paul and Morgan were, or people are just kind of interested in that sort of fundamentalism, or maybe it was because it was like about a TV show and it was a little bit lighter as well. But it just it was a bit bigger. And then my second Paul and Morgan video, they actually responded to. They did credit me as Bella Thorne, but but they did respond to me, so I think that might have helped a little bit as well.
Do you get mistaken for any other Thornes often?
No, I get people spelling it wrong quite a lot, or people being like, are you related to like some other Thorne that spells it a different way? And I'm like, but that's not the same name.
No, as you were talking about Scarlet Witch, I have to admit, I'm so out of it, I had to look up who that was.
Oh,
I was like frantically Googling. It's like, who is Scarlet Witch? What is the Marvel? I don't know. I don't
fair.
get into those circles.
Day job, I'm film and TV, so I'm like a bit of a nerd about it.
Yeah. So was it that, I think it was Paul and Morgan that said something, and you did a video on how they were no longer identifying as evangelical Christians?
They're still evangelical Christians. They're no longer hyper charismatic.
Charismatic. Sorry, that's the right word.
Yes.
Okay.
And I actually thought their video on that specifically was really good, and the way they talked about it was really open. Their response video to me afterwards was very much like, I know everybody's trying to say that maybe we're changed, we're going to become less, less. I was saying fundamentalist, but they didn't quite word it like that, obviously. But everyone's saying we're going to be less extreme in our views. We're still 100% of the word of the Bible. It was a little bit of a, but I kind of was like, yeah, change doesn't happen overnight. Just keep an open mind, because they've done. I've talked about them before because they've done some they've put out some bad stuff. And it was good to see them being like, we looked at the teachings and realized that we shouldn't blindly follow pastors. And it was like, yes. And I just thought that like fundamentalist evangelicals saying that to their audience can only be a good thing. So that was kind of why I was jazzed about that.
No, and that's one thing. Like I gave a resolution last year on the Truth Wanted episode where we were talking about comments from my haters. plug. And one thing that I promised was, you know what, I'm going to come out here and be a little bit more vocal about my opinions and my views. And I talked about this a little bit the last time I was on Nonprofits plug, where I said, you know what, when people do things, even people that we fundamentally disagree with, do things that are a step in the right direction, it's behavior that we want to encourage, we have to do positive things to encourage them. Now, I get it.
Mhm.
It's not like we're going to be sending everybody milk and cookies, but at the very least, we can say, I appreciate that you made a video about this, and I appreciate your current stance on this. Thank you, and continue to do good work. We don't have to be best friends with them, but at the same time, we don't have to say things like, yeah, but this still doesn't make up for all the other things you do. We know that it doesn't make up for everything the harmful that has been done. And if you look at the content that we were just talking about, there's a number of content creators like you, Emma, who have absolutely no problem picking apart a Paul and Morgan video. And I'm not saying that there isn't harmful content, but at the same time, when something happens, like they say, we can't just blindly listen pastors, you know what? At least give them a little bit of credit for that. So that is the hill that I'm dying on, is you know what? Continue to encourage the behavior that you want to see. At the very least, don't put it down.
Yeah,
What's your stance on all that?
totally agree. I think it's funny as well. It's kind of difficult because, like I say, the Paul and Morgan reaction was almost felt a bit knee-jerk, because I think some of the atheist community was genuinely being quite positive about the sort of changes they had been making. And I think they almost sort of had a negative response to that. And so I'm thinking, is the fact that, maybe they see us as an other and we're supporting that, they see that as a negative? But then I think that the only way that you could bring people from those communities together is if you are supportive of good things that the other one does. It's very difficult. I mean, I try to be as objective as I can about whatever I'm looking at, so if they do something good, I'm not going to be like, well, 8 years ago they said this thing, so I'm not going to listen to that. But yeah, I don't know. Their reaction kind of complicated the issue for me, because it seemed like, a lot of people saying this is really positive, we're really happy with this, kind of made them have a negative response, which was like a kind of an interesting thing to kind of pass out. Like, oh no, the bad people like what we did, so it must have been, not that great.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Strange.
So not to move on too quickly, but I did want to spend a good amount of time talking about the latest little, I guess it's fair to call it a feud between you and another popular theist creator. And this continues along with my trend of bringing on people on the show who have been whacked by Kent Hovind. So let's talk a little bit about the whacking. What put him on your radar in the first place, and what made it escalate? It's not an escalation. You made like 5 videos, but what got it to the point where it was? Tell us the story.
Well, I think I just came across the first video. Somebody sent it to me or something. The Whack an Atheist, that was about Simon Dan. And there was a little bit of, oh, cool, it's another British content creator that I hadn't seen before. He debunks certain things. It's really cool. And I was aware of Matt Powell, who I think at the time he had just moved over to Kent's compound, or was just about to. So they started working together a lot more. And I was just like, oh, cool. All the universe is aligned and all these things I'm interested in. So I'll definitely react to this. And my first video, if you go back and look at that one, it's so much more positive and light, and it's me being like, I think I enjoyed this because there's not really any hatred in it, it's not too bad. And then they responded, Kent Hovind and Matt Powell responded, and were more rude than I was expecting. And there's all the fun of the unscientific stuff, but then also they just were, like, I was like, they're kind of mean. And then so because that put me on other people's radars, people were being like, oh, hey, just so you know, these are some of the things that Kent's done and said, and he's done like all of these debates. And so I watched some of his debates with other people, and I was like, oh wow, this is interesting. So I went back and I just did the second half. I reviewed the second half of the first video I looked at because people wanted me to. And and so I don't know what it was, but that kind of put me in Kent's mind, and he just kept coming back to me for a little while, and it like in a really one of the things I super don't like, I mean nobody likes it, but one of the things that super irritates me on YouTube and things like that is people who edit disingenuously, you know, who take phrases out of context and they pause and ask a question that you were just about to answer and then skip past your bit, and I think Matt Powell tends to do that sort of editing, but Matt and Ken are super guilty of that. And that combined with like a bit of sexism and just being really rude, I was like, okay, like if we're gonna do this, and like I've read all these really horrible things, I was like, I'm just gonna, like, if you're gonna keep bringing me up, and because like I made the mistake of going to his live streams where they were talking about me once or twice, and his chat is just people being like, this looks like a boy, you know, like little trolls, properly like, oh, it's ugly and they're so stupid, and you know. So I was like, okay. And it just, in the end, I was like, this is like getting sort of annoying and boring, so I'm just gonna do like a big blowout and be like, okay, this is everything I know about this person and why I think that they're dangerous to follow, and then that's it. I'm done whacking an atheist and being whacked. And yeah.
You know, you touched on a lot of things there, and that, like, I'm trying to come up with a list of what to respond to in order. But one thing that stood out to me when I was watching these videos is how differently your whacking was to some men who they have whacked. And there was just such a high level, you know, there's no better word for it than misogyny there.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is something that they talked about a while back on Secular Sexuality, plug, where I was completely unaware of how different it is. You know, I have my experience engaging in the atheist community. I don't have the experience of a woman engaging in the atheist community. And I didn't realize until really starting to listen and pay attention just how different of experience it is for me. You know, their lived experience is that varied from mine. So thank you for, you know, putting yourself out there and you know, and firing back on them. But one thing too is, you know, you pointed out that a lot of the arguments that they make and the way that they make them are really blatantly dishonest and
super dishonest. Yeah.
right. And it's like, you know what, if a message was good, if a message was true, and if a message has merit behind it, it feels like you wouldn't have to resort to so many underhanded tactics.
So
Like
exactly
editing.
what I said. Yeah, we did I did a collab with Atheist Junior, and we sort of responded to Ken, you know, whacking me and asking all these questions and so on. And I kind of said, like, I'd like to see a debate from, he's done over 200 debates. I'd love to see him debate without saying, that's dumb, that's, atheists are dumb, it's so stupid, and like hitting a toy with a hammer and all these, because like there's no, if you really have the truth and you feel vindicated and you're correct, I don't understand why you would need to also be rude and use manipulative language, and it just doesn't make sense to me.
Right. And now we also, I mean, we've got to acknowledge that just because someone resorts to dishonest tactics does not mean that their message necessarily is untrue, but it just makes me wonder why they would have to resort to that. It's not just Kent Hovind. You'll see this a lot, dishonest editing or quote mining. There's a lot of different little ways that they do it. And you would be happy to point out too that it's not just theists that do this. Like people who try to sell you on scams and MLMs will do similar things where they try to obfuscate information, either make it seem simpler than it is, right? It's like, oh, this is a business model, trust us, it's sound, you know, but not really talk about like actual numbers, that kind of thing. It's like, if I don't think it's that they don't get it. I think that the problem is they can't sell it. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, I think you might be right.
To an extent, when I hear pastors talking, and then when I hear the same kind of thing mirrored back from their congregation, to me, it's like, okay, I understand it. You were convinced by someone, and now you think that we ought to be convinced by the same thing in the same way. We're not your congregation. Okay. You can't just talk to us from an altar, from a pulpit, and expect us to just eat it up. Okay. We're going to have meaningful questions. And we are actually telling you, and I shouldn't say we, but a lot of atheists are actually telling you we can be convinced if there is good evidence for it. And if you talk to us in the way that we need to be talked to about it, you can't talk to us like your congregation. We have meaningful questions. And if you don't address those meaningful questions in a meaningful way, then we're just we have lost interest in engaging with you. So
yeah, and I think that's probably the issue with a lot of people. Like if you're talking about somebody with Hovind and they've done a certain type of preaching their whole lives, and then they try and engage with people from a completely different outside perspective, but they're still using the same tactics. And it's just, I think whatever you try, even if you were just a teacher and whatever you're trying to share, that's not going to work, because you need to speak in a different way to reach a different kind of person.
Well, this is a call-in show, folks. So if you have anything that you want to talk to me and Emma about, you can see we're willing to talk about a wide variety of topics. So if you've ever just wanted to call for the first time, look at this. It's a giggle fest. This is just, it's going to be fun tonight. So even if you just wanted to call, just have a little bit of fun with us. This is
have
the
a
night
giggle.
to do it.
Call for a giggle.
Yeah. But the last thing that I wanted to touch on, and then we'll get to the calls, is the idea of punching up versus punching down. And I made that comment before the show that if a local preacher with a YouTube following of like 20 people gave a word for word sermon that they may have heard from Frank Turek or any other of the larger creators out there, we would treat that very differently than if it came from one of the big names with huge followings. So what's your take on punching up versus punching down? And do you treat them differently? And if so, why do you, and why should we treat them differently?
Yeah. I mean, always. It's one of the things that's like weirdly important to me. I just feel like there's no and I managed to get this in my head quite early on, because even when you have like 1,000 followers versus like 10, suddenly there is an element of responsibility, because 1,000 people could go and harm somebody who is not prepared for it remotely. I just think, yeah, there's so much to punch up that there's no sense in punching down. And I we were talking about my earlier sort of MLM stuff, and I always, if I was talking about just sharing people's videos, even though like a lot of those, they're made to be shared because they're made to reach a wider audience and sell products and things, they're still, if you're picking on somebody who's got like 200 followers, when you're sharing that to like 50,000, it's just, I just don't think it's fair to, not only you're, by being critical, then you're kind of presenting more of a negative side of them than an overall balance, and like putting them potentially at risk. I just don't like it. And I see people doing it online, and I see it from all, like sides. And especially when sometimes I look at, this is just because of what I look at online, but I look at some sort of like more conservative commentators, because I'm trying to get a feel for like a video or something, and I'll quite often see people like sharing tweets and being critical of like just tiny creators in comparison with themselves. And I think, I don't think you should not do it. I think if you have a valid reason to talk about something, that's absolutely fine. But I think it's just so much better to make it clear that what you find acceptable, and that, we're not about, we're trying not to spread hate. Because, and here's the thing, I've been at the receiving end, right? When I've talked about kind of manosphere, red pill, pickup artist kind of stuff, I have had I had a bunch of videos made about me by, and this was probably when I was at like 10 to 20,000 on YouTube or something like that. And these like people with like 500,000 followers were making videos on me, and I was just getting just streams of like sexist hate in all my inboxes. And it was just like, so there was no element of, okay, there's a difference in scale here. I can see from the comments that there's certain vitriol towards women, so maybe I want to say something. There was just no consideration. I was like, I definitely don't want anything I ever do to encourage that kind of behavior either. So I don't like it. I don't like it.
And before I get it in chat, because I know that there's someone thinking in chat right now that as long as you attack the idea and not the person, then you should be in the clear, right? But one thing we have to remember is that us content creators, we're human. Okay. And if you have developed a rather small channel where your number of followers is like very small, you are accustomed to your channel only getting that very small amount of attention. To suddenly get a flood of apparently negative messages, even if they are attacking the idea and not the person, that hurts. And
for sure,
like, yeah, like you've been on, have you ever been on your Twitch channel and you get a raid from someone who has like 80 followers on their channel?
No, thankfully not.
Right. And that even though that's a positive thing, right? These are people who, this is, someone basically said, I want to introduce my audience to you. This is a positive thing. But people who have small platforms and small channels, they're just not ready for it. So it's not that you're not attacking the idea, you're being mindful of who you're attacking the idea with. Right. There are plenty of people who you can find on Twitter, you can find on Reddit, you can find on YouTube, who are willing to engage with these ideas and who put themselves out in public specifically to engage with the ideas. So to me, it's not about attacking the idea, therefore I can attack anybody who has this idea. It's finding someone who has the mental space and the preparation and the desire to want to engage with it. So it's not about so it's not about ad hominem, you're picking on these people, and not picking on these people. It's trying to be mindful of the fact that there are humans behind all this, and they have some may have very negative reactions to getting a sudden flood of, even if it's not negative, even if you're meaningfully engaging with their topic, it might still be incredibly overwhelming.
Yeah, definitely.